Hey there, I'm getting ready to do an assembly guide for Bro Katan Armor. So the new model features custom supports that print with the model. The whole purpose of them is to give a much better surface finish along this area here. Let's see how easy they come off. They should come off pretty easy. There will be a little bit of cleanup involved, but not much. But there you go, you can see it came off very easily. Now I'll do this side. These custom supports will be included with the model. Get that off. Get this one here. There we go. Right along this seam line here. Sometimes I find it's easier to get supports off. You pull the raft off. I usually print with a raft because I like the extra adhesion to the bed, because, you know, this thing prints like this and I'm always afraid it's going to go snap and fall forward or backwards. So I put a raft on there just to kind of add a little extra insurance. There you go. You can see we've gotten all of the custom supports off, and these surfaces are massively better than what they normally look like with slicer supports. Now I know that, you know, Prusa Slicer and Cura, and I believe Super Slicer as well, have these things called interface layers that are designed to help maintain surface quality on supported areas. I haven't gotten familiar with those yet. I'm still using Simplify 3D. I'm learning Prusa Slicer right now. In the meantime, I like having the custom supports. Besides, it's nice getting a model that's already supported and you don't have to go in and do any of that stuff. You just need to set up the correct settings. Okay, so we got the custom supports off the chest plate, and now we're going to go ahead and do the belly plate. And it's the same thing. Basically just kind of work them loose. They come off easy in some areas, and other areas they might be a little more challenging, but they're still going to come off. Right? There we go. So yeah, it's just a matter of working it a little bit. And you may get some pieces that hang up, but for the most part, those came off. And as you can see, any place where it's still rough, that's just leftover support material that's still there. But these are the surfaces where it came clean off, and you can see how nice those are. It's not going to take long to get those prepped out for paint. So yeah, I've got a variety of files that I use. The one I normally start with is this guy because it's kind of a medium grade. It's not too abrasive, but you're just going to go through and just kind of work this stuff down. And then at the end, when it's really thin, I have a couple of different X-Acto blades that I use. This one's my favorite. I call it the guillotine because it's kind of shaped like a guillotine blade. But it's really nice because you can get in, and you got to keep your hands out of the way. Really important to keep your hands out of the way and always cut away from you. But you just kind of get under where the split is, and you can kind of work that stuff off. And then of course you can get in with sandpaper and whatever else. Now we're not gonna do the full finish here. The whole main point right now is assembly. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to prep these parts. We've got two parts here for epoxy. We're going to abrade this surface in here, and we're going to abrade this surface here, and I'll show you how to do that next. Okay, so now it's about prepping the parts for epoxy. You could just go ahead and mix up epoxy and put it in here and glue your parts together, and it probably would work, but I like to add some abrasions because it increases the surface area and gives the epoxy more to grab onto, and just makes it more likely that your part's not going to go anywhere. So basically, I like to use a file. I bought a set of these little files, these different little files. I've got, you know, a whole variety of them. I've got this flat one, that's one of my favorites. I've got this pointy one, that's my other favorite. I got like 3 that are my favorites. This one is my abrasion file. It's got a nice sharp point on it, but it's not a knife, so it's a little safer to use. But I just go in and I just scratch it up. You know, and I'll go in different directions. So I'll go all the way across one way, and then I'll reverse it, go the other way, kind of making like an X pattern. And then, as a final tool or measure, I'll just do some circles. And I'm just applying light pressure. I'm not trying to punch through this thing, just enough to scratch it. One of the things, in addition to abrading inside the socket, I also want to go around this outside perimeter here, because if you'll notice, this part has a little bit of a lip around it that makes contact with this area. So I want to abrade that as well. So I'm just going to go through and add some abrasions around the perimeter. You can also use like 80 grit sandpaper, works really well. Just what you're trying to do is increase the surface area that the epoxy can grab onto. That's pretty much the whole point. Okay, so you got everything abraded. I just want to show something real quick. I did go back in with some 80 grit sandpaper just to kind of add a little extra, and also to kind of break off any little chunks that might have been dug out when I was using the file. And this thing is just basically a piece of a Mando spatula, and I just wrap some sandpaper around it like that. Just go around, and that way I can kind of just add a little bit extra there. Before you glue, you always want to check and just make sure that everything's fitting correctly. I like to just put the part in, and I will just do a test fit. It's a little tricky because fingers are holding this clip down. Then you just slide the belly plate in, and just kind of just generally check and make sure everything lines up correctly, and it does. So we're good to go for epoxy. Okay, it's epoxy time. So you're gonna need a scale, and I set mine up, I turn it on, and then I'll put this little tray on which protects the base, and then you put a cup, and when it's got a weight on there, you're gonna hit T for tear, and that zeroes everything out. You want to do a 50-50 mix of epoxy. You can mix it a little bit hot, so if you go just a little bit over with your hardener, that's okay. Just realize that you're not going to have as much work time. I like to start with the resin, which is the black, and you can use any epoxy you want. I just like this JB Weld stuff, this clear weld. I'm going to do like 2 grams for this. I'll do 1 gram of the resin, and then I'll do 1 gram of the hardener. Okay, that should be good. Now we're going to mix it thoroughly for 1 minute. I like these little stir sticks that have the square end. I get them at Wally World. They're called skinny sticks. They're in the craft section. And I like them because they're flat, because when you're mixing this stuff up, you want to make sure you can scrape the sides and the bottom to really get all the material incorporated. So we're going to mix for a minute. We can just speed this up. I think that's pretty good. I'm going to move this out of the way, and we're going to move on to the gluing stage. And we only need to put glue in one place, and that's in this little pocket right here. And just get it into here. And we don't have a lot of material, but we do have just enough. You don't need a huge amount of epoxy. You really just want to get coverage. You're actually better off with thinner coats than thicker coats. Now I'm relying on the fact that some of this epoxy is going to push out when I put the part in and I compress it with clamps, and I want that to happen. I want there to be a little bit of overflow, because that's going to get this perimeter here. And let's make sure we get everything out and get it well distributed. And now we'll set this aside. Make sure this thing is facing the right way. Don't put it like this. That can happen. Okay, so we're going to get it set in. And make sure it's seated properly in the socket. And then I like to use these little clamps right here. They're not very big, and they're like $2 each. And I take one of the sides off because I want to get the metal up in there and holding this part down like this on both sides. So we've got clamping happening, and you can see that it's pushing the epoxy out around the edges. We want that. Now, one of the things you can do though is get a paper towel, put some isopropyl alcohol on it. I use 90%, and you can just wipe around that edge and that'll clean it up a little bit. I'm going to put one more clamp on here, one of these larger clamps, to cover the back, like so. And let me just check. Everything looks good. Looks like we've got a good seal all the way around. So that's kind of what you're looking for. And again, make sure that your part is pointed the right way, okay? And now we wait 90 minutes minimum. 2 hours is better before we test fit this thing. So just walk away, just walk away. Your patience will be rewarded. It's been 2 hours. We're gonna go ahead and see how we did here. A couple of things to keep in mind that can prevent this from fitting correctly, but they're easy to fix. Sometimes you might have some excess material in these areas, like support material, that you just missed. These may have support material in them. And also, there's a groove in here that the clip snaps into. And sometimes when I print it, I get a little couple of strands of droop there, so I usually just go through with a, here's the knife I'm looking for. I just go through with this X-Acto knife right here, and I kind of just very carefully run down the edge of it like this, kind of take those things out. I'm doing it at sort of an awkward angle here right now so you can see, but basically it's just this idea. Kind of just clean this top edge off, and that'll help it to lock together. Because basically what you want to happen is you're going to put your pieces together. You've got these registration tabs here. Everything locks together, and that's it. And now you've got a fully functional piece. If you want to take this thing apart, there's a special tool that I like to use. It's really just a little scraper spatula thing for 3D printing, but it works great. And they're not very expensive. So mine should be around here somewhere. Oh, it's over there. I'm going to use the force and grab it. Oh, cool. I got it. I usually just get up under one side of it like this, and I take my thumb and I just push on this corner. Now I'm left-handed, so if you're right-handed, just reverse what I'm doing. Just lift it up and push it out, just like that. And then when you want to put it back together, same deal. Just line up these horns with the nubs in there, and that's it. Bro Katan. Bro.